Welcome to Swift Over Coffee Live. This is Season 2, Episode 5. I'm Paul Hudson.
I'm Erica Sadun.
And this is obviously an exciting time because this is Dubmas, right, Erica?
Merry Dubmas to you, Paul. And, it's that time of year. Everybody's really super excited. We've all laid out we put out our cocoa and our web cookies, and we're hoping that St. Federighi will come with lots and lots of goodies for all the kids to put into their stockings. And what do you think Santa Closure will be putting in your stocking this year?
Well, I hope lots of Swift UI. Let's face it, I'm extremely biased in that front. But folks listening who are on the podcast later on, we're only now 1 week before WWDC, and that means we're awfully excited about what's going to happen. You know, Craig is checking his list to see which developers have been naughty and which have been nice. I don't even know what a naughty Swift developer looks like, Erica. What is a naughty Swift developer?
Well, they get coal instances in their stockings, for one thing. Hi there, sweetie.
We've got a pitch invader. So they have coal in their cocoa stocking, you said. Yes.
Well, NS coal.
There you go. Yes, well, it's certainly exciting because we're going to find out a full year of Apple developer work, if not more, 2 years, 3 years of behind-the-scenes work that are finally about to be launched and happen, which is exciting. So much going on. It's a great time of year, right? The bit just before the excitement kicks off.
It's the most exciting time of the year.
It really is.
Have you noticed that there are no Dub carols until after? We need Dub carols that happen like in the month before Dub.
We need James Dempsey on the case. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, he's always in the middle of Dub. It's not leading up to it. Right. And we need, to be in the festive season. We need to be, hanging little Claris dog cows around the house.
Yeah, it's true.
Well,
listen, folks, thank you to everyone who's come along to this live stream on YouTube. You had the chance to ask questions and get involved later on. I want to say up front, obviously, it's a very hard time around the world right now. We have a global pandemic. We have worldwide protests for social justice. And I really appreciate you all taking time out of your day to come here and talk Swift with us. I know it's a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but
hopefully
I hope
will be a break from reality.
There you go. The next hour and a half or so, we're just going to chat, small talk about Swift and have some fun. So hopefully that'll be a nice break from some of the pain out there. And like I said, later on in an open ballot, we'll be asking you what your Swift wish lists are, your Swift UI wish lists, your UI kit wish lists. So start thinking now. Don't post them in the chat just yet. Think now. Come back later on and we'll get involved. I want to say, by the way, this is the first of 2 live streams I'm doing this week, with the other being an interview with Chris Latner, who started Swift at Apple. That takes place on Thursday, I think. So don't miss that either. Come check that out. Anyway.
That's going to be pretty exciting, isn't it?
I hope so. We'll find out. It requires some good questions. Give me some good questions, Erica. Come along on Thursday.
Well, I would like to know the biggest compromises that he regrets.
Yeah, biggest regrets. That'd set the whole thing off a nice positive tone, wouldn't it? What are your biggest regrets about Swift?
No, I think it's awesome to have that vision, from the very beginning, to see where the language went, and we know what all the good stuff is because we have it and play with it. But it would also be, what didn't make it into the language that he really wished made it into the language, and what compromises did they have to make in terms of delivering something that was not ideal. Now I know what my biggest regret is, the thing that Chris called "I believe an abomination," which is trailing commas everywhere.
Yeah, well, we'll find out more on Thursday. Anyway, what do we have in the news world? Because it's been a while since our last episode, Erica. Catch up in the news. What's been happening?
Oh, news!
News!
Yes, news! This is the part of the podcast. Is it still called a podcast if we're doing it on YouTube?
I think they call it a vodcast. That's what the cool kids don't call it. But yeah, it's a podcast.
Okay, because vodka sounds like something you would drink with,
Orange.
shaken, not stirred.
Yeah, it's a screwdriver for the internet age.
Yeah, but this is the part where we do news. So let's talk about some of the biggest things that have been happening in Swift in the past few weeks. So I want to actually start by pushing back a little bit further than the last 2 weeks because it's been a while since we've done this.
Mm.
And I want to start with remote conferences because this is you have a pandemic, and a lot of what brings the Swift community together that allows us to exist beyond, online forums and Slack channels and things like that is conferences. They're such a vital part of making us a really vibrant Swift community. And this year, everybody had to adapt. So we've seen recently app builders and UIConf and Try become new things as they went online and tried to figure out, how do you have something that's not just talking heads? How do you make it have some of those things that sets conferences apart and gives them that extra bonus of networking and a connectivity and warmth?
Yeah. And that's hard, right? Because we are obviously very distant, and, in any internet call, even the very finest broadband, Ethernet, whatever, fiber, there's still lag, there's still latency. It's never the same as being in the same room as somebody. And so they've had to work extra hard, I think, to really give folks a welcoming experience, to make them feel part of the community. And it seems to me they've done a very good job. I mean, the response I've seen so far from app builders, UIConf, TriSwift World, and more have been very, very positive.
Mm-hmm. People really liked the break from the pandemic, for one thing. They were able to get away from that sense of lock-in and be with other people. And I think the fact, not only were you enriching your mind during those, conference days, because that's a really important thing when you're developing, when you're trying to keep on top of tech, when you're trying to be inspired. That's what conferences generally give you. But there's also those coffee breaks and the breakout rooms and all the things that let you talk with people you don't normally talk to when you're sitting at home day after day after day after day. I think that the social change of trying to adapt to COVID has been so profound. And these conferences were uplifting. They made everybody happy and inspired.
I hope so. And it was great having the workshops too, because, you and I both ran workshops at TriSwift World, and they were done all over Zoom. So, you could have done a YouTube live stream like this where you just project out to lots of people, but these were very, very small groups of people. They were, classes of 10 to 15 maybe, and all on Zoom, so you could see everyone's face following along, asking questions, interrupt, get involved, cross-talk if you wanted to. And it worked very well, because it actually made an intimate experience that you were learning together, that you were sharing ideas together, as opposed to just a one-way projection.
I just loved it. I haven't taught for about 2 years before that, and it just suddenly hit me how much I love this, how much I love the teaching and connecting and back and forth. The workshops were really just the highlight of my year. I love this stuff, and I am so excited that Natasha has said that she's going to continue this after WWDC, that as the week happens, as we discover new tech or find, changes to existing tech, that those of us who are obsessive and really do deep dives, I can't imagine between the two of us who would do that, but that we can actually develop workshops during the week, and then hopefully the week after or the second week after we get to do this again, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't wait.
Well, the sessions were good too, including a very special one close to my heart at UIConf, which was my daughter Sophie's very first talk. She gave the opening keynote at UIConf, helping me out with the keynote, and it worked really, really well. She had a good time. She spent a long time, learning the technology, practicing her lines, writing her lines, rehearsing it, and delivering it to the camera. Took a long time, but she worked super hard. And I think it shows, even though it's like only a 23.5-minute talk. Years of work into getting her this far and helping her understand what's happening. And she did very well, I think. She really enjoyed it.
And she was awesome. She was so poised and clear. And, she was born for the camera. And she just did a fantastic job. I'm so proud of her.
Well, thank you. She has her own trademark already, because she did then last week. She was asked by the Raspberry Pi Foundation to do a live stream with them on Scratch. And she insisted she's going to have her trademark cat ears. She has a cat ear collection. Here are two of her pink cat ears. She's got white cat ears for the white day. She has tartan cat ears for the tartan days. She has sequin sparkly cat ears for the special occasion. So yeah, she's really branching out into the sort of personal branding space very quickly, I think,
And what's shocking is that my Sophie also has her collection of cat ears.
Wow.
So it seems to be something about the Sophie lived experience.
Who wouldn't like a pair of cat ears anyway? So it turns out, of course, there is another major remote conference happening imminently. More on that later on. But what else has been happening in news?
Wait a second. I can't think of what that conference might be.
It's Hacking with Swift Live in less than a month.
Oh, yes, of course. That's
the one. That's the one.
I totally, I totally zoned on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, new stuff.
News. You gotta keep it together, Erica. You can do it, Erica. You can do it. Come on, brace yourself. This is where all the editing comes in, folks, who are doing the podcast. We've got to edit out hours of Erica just laughing away to herself.
Sorry, I've got to move past the dub thing. Okay.
Serious face.
Okay. I don't think I can do a serious face at this point. So dub is coming, and there's no Mac client. What's the deal?
Don't know, but we have got Guy Rambo's amazing Mac client, haven't we?
And it's been updated. I've been looking at the repo because, it's all open source. And, I tried it out this morning. It looks great. I imagine it's going to work. He always makes it work. And I can never figure out how is he going to make it work when you can't test it in advance. But he magics it, and it's so cool. And so even though it's appalling that Apple did not step up, come on, it's a checkbox for iPad apps.
Yeah, it's amazing. It'll just work.
I think this is maybe his app will be the catalyst for change.
Ooh, sneaky, but I like it.
All right, another thing. Dave Verwer. Did I say that right?
You did.
I don't think I've ever tried saying his name out loud before.
Dave. It's easy.
Dave. Can we just call him the Dave? Of course, that then we would have the DeLong.
There's a TV channel here in the UK called Dave, because the idea is that everyone has a friend called Dave, and yes, Dave Verwer.
And that's the only one. That's the only channel that still has what's his name in space, with Curry, Vindaloo, an evolved cat.
Red Dwarf.
Red Dwarf.
Got there in the end.
Dave.
let's focus on the particular Dave in question at this point. Dave Verwer, carry on.
So Dave Verwer has introduced a brand new Swift package index, which is really exciting. It is not the first, it's not the only index of Swift packages that are available, but it's a brand new one, and it has some really great features that I think a lot of people will really appreciate, whether you are a developer of Swift package material or a consumer or both.
Yeah.
It's located at swiftpackageindex.com, and Dave had originally developed swiftpm.co. This is not swiftpm.co. This is swiftpackageindex.com. And it shows version history, commit history, how many releases there have been, not just the number of commits, where things are, the documentation that's associated with the package that has, wherever it's deployed to. It is so easy to submit to, and it has a whole series of validation steps that are built in to make sure that when you submit your package, that the package is actually ready for prime time. I really appreciated that when I was submitting my packages. So it's been a really positive experience, at least from a developer of Swift packages. Yeah. And I think we've kind of are entering a renaissance of the Swift packages, finally starting to really hit its stride in terms of adoption. And I'm really excited about that.
Well, it's very timely because obviously Swift 5.3 is a week away from entering beta. And that's going to bring some epic Swift package manager improvements like binary frameworks and much, much more. So yeah, I think we're about to see a huge explosion in these things. But what I don't understand still is, Apple's big announcement from last year was that GitHub are going to host an Apple Swift repository for these things, and hasn't really materialized. And helpfully, Dave was not put off by that announcement. He carried on with his idea anyway. And it's been good because we haven't had anything from Apple or GitHub since then. So we are now seeing this third-party plan fill that massive, massive gap. And it's great that it's been written not just by Dave, but also by Sven A. Schmidt, entirely in Vapor. So the things about Swift written in Swift and shipping, which is great. And if they could change one thing, I've already told Dave this, the Dave, as he's now called, I've already told the Dave this, I'd love to have an API because it'd make a great, interesting tutorial API to write about. You can make interesting apps with it, do queries to find things. It'd be really, really nice. So come on, the Dave. we trust you to give us an API one of these days.
What it needs, though, is tagging. And in fact, I was thinking about that. And I'm wondering whether or not I want to push the people who develop SwiftPM to add tags directly to the package, or whether that's something I want to push Dave to add as part of the submission process. But I think that packages should have tags.
Great. Then that's another evolution proposal right there from Eric Sadun. yet another one. They love seeing you.
I'm going to see if I can get some traction on that.
I think your entire goal is to try and collect. I think your entire goal is to try and collect Swift Evolution frequent flyer miles. That's not a thing, Erica. You don't get bonus points for submitting as many as you can.
It's not that. It's like I want my toys, so I can't just sit around and wait for other people to do it because it's not going to happen. Yep. If you believe something passionately, you've got to do it yourself. And I was looking for my Now package, the one that I wrote for this podcast, and I put in the word date, and it didn't show up, which means either I have to, all the READMEs need to include the tags, or there has to be a better solution, because I don't want to have tags in my README. I just think, here's my README, here's all about my package, and then putting tags at the bottom just seems wrong.
Fair. Okay, so what else is happening in news right now?
Well, the big things that are happening in news are packages, the server, and Dave's thing kind of combine those, but we're seeing more of that because we have the newly announced Swift, what's it called? The AWS Lambda runtime.
Ah, yes, from Amazon.
That's Amazon Web Services.
Yes.
Should I try that again?
No, it's great. Give us. The thing is, do you actually plan to use it? I mean, do you use Lambda currently from Amazon?
Okay, no, I don't, but I do have my credentials. They have my credit card and everything, so the billing's all set. And it's sort of like I don't have a project. So it's there, it's exciting, it's something I want to play with, but I have no reason to play with it. And my calendar is so full right now that, I don't have the flexibility.
It's a busy time of year,
to
right?
play with it.
Pre-dub. We're not sitting around bored exactly right now. I think it at least answers the question, is Swift ready for the server? We can definitely say, yes, it's ready for the serverless now because it's now on AWS.
Been ready for the server. And I think, hey, sweetie. It's just invasion of the Sophies. She'll be out in a second.
This one's actually Charlotte, the little one, Charlotte.
Say hi, sweetie.
Hi, sweetie.
Oh, was that Charlotte? I wasn't looking at the height.
That was, yeah, the smaller.
It's like your two puppies. I see small British children. It's like it's hard to tell the difference.
Yeah, they're all short and squeaky. So Swift AWS Lambda is one of those things that we've been using Swift on Linux for a while now. It works very, very well, but it's great seeing an epic-sized company take this on board. No one works at a bigger scale than AWS. So for Amazon to back this is really, really huge. And it's interesting that it's in a space where we haven't got a lot of work so far. We've got quite a lot of server-side Swift, and this is the first time we're seeing serverless Swift in a widespread environment. So seeing, obviously there's a little educational hump to get over explaining what serverless actually means. Yes, it is actually still a server. There is not an absence of server, but you aren't, renting a server anymore. You're renting the resources on the server instead. So there's an educational hump to get over, but I hope that once folks do that, they are excited by it and will build some interesting things and give it a try. But it's really nice to see it happen. I mean, having official backing for Amazon Linux and now Ubuntu and now CentOS and macOS and imminently Windows, in theory Windows, even though it's viciously hard to build right now.
Yes,
it's getting
but
there.
You're missing the big one, you're missing the big one, which was announced just before, which is Amazon Linux.
I said that one. That was the first one I said.
No, you didn't.
I totally did.
No, it was the one you missed.
This one's recorded, Erica. You're going to find out when I rewind this and it'll say Amazon Linux first. And you're like, oh, snap, Paul was right. Busted.
No, I'm listening, trying to wait for you to hit it. And then, of course, I feel like I have to. No.
See, listeners here on YouTube can actually rewind and hear me say Amazon Linux first. Okay, so anyway, it's cool it's happening, which is great.
And the thing is, you stole the extension of the language thing.
I did.
That we now have 5 different platforms that are supported, directly now for Linux.
Which is great.
It's terrific.
So, elsewhere in news, Erica, what else we have before we break down to the giggles once again? Yes, Yixi says, thank you. Yixi says, he said Amazon Linux lol. Thank you very much, Yixi. You are always my favorite attendee to these podcast events. That's going to go on my little picture on the screen.
Yes, this is going to go to the law of Paul, which is don't doubt the Paul.
Hey, no. We have the Dave. We have not got the Paul. Let's preserve that important title for the man who really deserves it.
There was something I called you earlier this morning, and I can't remember what it was. Do you remember?
No, but Smongo here has an extraordinary burn for you. He says, Paul probably pronounced it wrong. That's why Erica didn't hear it. Oh, dear. Oh, we've even got a hashtag. No. We've got a hashtag here. We've got Prathamesh Kawakar saying, hashtag Paul was right.
Well, he was. But, there's also hashtag Paul is dead from the Beatles.
Ooh, let's leave that one to one side.
We don't want to go there.
No, let's move swiftly on to the next piece of news on our agenda.
This is not Abbey Road.
No.
Okay, let me get back. No, I was going to try to find what I had called you earlier this morning. I came up with a really... and it wasn't Mr. Hudson. Mr. Hudson was when I was trying to speak British.
Right.
Which didn't work well.
It did not work at all.
That was not a good thing.
No.
No. What did you call it? It was something like 1940s.
Americans stationed in the UK. Do you want some gum chum kind of English? Yeah, that.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
Swell.
Swell, exactly. I never say swell. All right, let's stick to Swift, shall we? What's been happening on the evolution front?
Okay, on the evolution front, the thing is, this is boring and it's from March. Do people really care about boring things that happened in March, even if they're cool?
What boring things from March?
The tuple conformance. That's March.
Oh, you mean the tuple
We're in
conformance?
June.
Well,
Tuple.
yeah. We'll put that to one side, or it'll be here all day. Well, at least outline what's changing and why, perhaps. Let's start with that.
Wait a second. Say that again, because I didn't quite get that.
Let's park the pronunciation thing, otherwise we'll be here all day. What exactly are we speaking about? What has changed and why?
Tuple conformance for equatable, comparable, and hashable. Tuples have always been used as basically anonymous structs, and there's no reason that as an anonymous struct they should not be comparable and hashable and equatable and so forth, and they finally are. It's something everybody's been waiting for with bated breath. They've been putting it on their wish lists. They've been writing Santa Claus closure. They've been, wanting this for a very long time. It's finally happened. It's house cleaning. This is a house cleaning evolution proposal.
This is great.
It's been adopted.
So this got approved just last month.
You're going to bring in Swift UI, aren't you?
I'm not going to bring Swift UI. It's approved in May, not in March. It's a new thing. It's only approved, and it won't even go into, I don't think, Swift 5.3. I think it's getting to there. But, for a long time, we've been able to do tuple A equals tuple B, or tuple A less than tuple B, and get true back, true or false, or whatever. But we haven't been able to do that in a generic way. We haven't been able to make an array of tuples and sort them, for example. That's not been possible for now because they haven't conformed to anything. They've had special compiler code put in place to do comparison of stuff, which is great and nice. But this new thing, conforming to equatable, comparable, and hashable, is important because that means if you use a tuple inside a struct, you now can have your synthesized conformances for equatable and hashable. Or you can have an array of these things, and then as long as the tuples themselves conform to comparable, the whole array conforms to comparable. And that's a nice, important change, I think. It's a cleanup of the language. It's been a hole that's been hacked around for a while and removed and had actual conformance put in place. So I'm glad to see this one. It's only a month old. It's great.
It's especially useful for anybody who does server responses, because those are often represented as tuples.
Yeah, that's very timely, it turns out. But it won't be in 5.3. And also not in 5.3 is SE0270. What do you think of that one? Is that one also boring, Erica?
Which, I think it's really cool. But every time I say something is, remarkably cool, you
This is a test, you see.
Started on how boring it is.
This is a coolness test.
And that's
first,
collection.
Let's explain. Yeah, go ahead and explain what it actually does first.
It's adding collection operations on non-contiguous elements. So you can do things that take bits and pieces from different parts of your collection and still be able to do operations on them. And again, it's an essential, fundamental, house cleaning, wonderful thing that I think is extremely exciting.
I like it too. But I think it's particularly interesting because this is the first time I've seen code go into Swift and available in Swift 5.3 nightly, but then get removed from there and moved across into the new Swift standard library preview package. It's being previewed. They want to let it bake a bit longer. So they can,
love that.
It's exactly. It's great. They can. By putting it there, we're acknowledging this is a good idea. We like it. We think this is the right solution, but we're not sure. Let's let folks try it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and then evolve it further in practice. And why the heck is that not used more? It's a great idea.
Well, first of all, it's very new. Second of all, a whole bunch of us were beating the drums for this. But most importantly, why did they not do this with trailing closure syntax?
That would require, surely, compiler support, no?
I guess.
Yeah, I guess they could do like a little flag at compile time.
Don't use logic.
Enable controversial Swift features -- or something like that, So we'll see how far that gets them. And it's not evolution, but
and then
your personal love of your life right now has hit a small milestone. Is that accurate?
It has, and oh my gosh, this has become basically. I am doing workshops on this. I am kind of scoping out whether or not this can be a book. It's Swift Argument Parser, and it has hit 0.1.
Wow. It is 10% of the way towards being stable.
No, I don't think it will ever be stable. But, here's the thing about Swift Package Manager, and especially about command line utilities, is that as Apple developers, we live in terror of change. And Apple every single year gives us new APIs. They deprecate things all over the place. Our code from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, it's not going to run. We kind of have accepted this. It's not something we should be proud of, but with Swift Package Manager, you can say which version of Swift.
This is mostly your fault.
I know. I killed
You've written more evolution things than anybody else. It's mostly your fault. You only have yourself to blame, Erica.
It predates me. I mean, look at iOS code. Look at Cocoa code. Nothing keeps Apple from doing this. Anyway, Swift Package Manager, which is brilliant. I love Swift Package Manager. It lets you fix your build to a particular release because you tag everything using Git tags when you post things, which means that you can write to a specific version of a library. If it is a Swift Package Manager library, you can freeze it to that particular version, and that means your code won't keep breaking. Now, yes, you don't get access to new features. Yes, you don't get access to new bug fixes, but that's only until you want to move your app forward. And you can write utilities, deploy utilities, and be sure that people who are building them using Swift Build through the package manager also, it will work because you set it to a particular release. It's kind of the antidote for Apple's little problem with, update mania.
Yeah, I certainly agree.
Apple really needs to take the code lithium.
Yeah. So I think it's certainly the case that Swift PM allows us to pin things very carefully and use 0.1.0, but I do hope it becomes stable at some point, that we can see an actual 1.0 release that is going to be relied on for a long time, because it's an important project. I love it very much, but I can't see breaking version 2 coming out and breaking version 3 and argument parser UI or whatever it is, because ultimately we're talking about a very advanced Swifty version of getopt on Unix, POSIX, and there's only so far that concept can go. I'm hoping for a 1.0, drawing a line, 1.0.6, whatever, bug fix and so forth, maybe a 1.1, but never a 2.0. I think they'll just draw a line somewhere and say, that's enough now, we've got other things to look at and other challenges to solve.
When you're using this technology, it really is like you're in 1985. It is a time warp. And the things that I think it can become stable, but what is really fascinating is where the old tech The 1985 tech hits things like unit testing and hits things like continuous integration and hits things like internationalization and where it can adapt and where it can't adapt. And that, I think, is really much more exciting. So even though you think to yourself, it's just GetOpt, it's more than that, because we have to rethink how we code, because we are using a modern programming language, a type-safe programming language, and it's not just about GetOpt.
Okay, let's leave there news and let's think about picks. Do you want to go first this time, or shall I go first? I don't really mind.
And no, we are having a tiny pause. Don't you remember the tiny pause, like a little tiny kitten?
Cool. Let's pause away. Speaking of kittens, I can put on some cat ears if you like.
So, do you want to intro, or is this my brief intro?
You go ahead. This is you can intro away. I'll sit here and admire your showmanship.
So let's move on now to picks, and this is the time where each of us showcases some technology things that we have found recently or that we're excited about right now, and that is things that we want to share with our Swift using friends. So I'm going to go to Paul and ask you, what is your pick?
So right now in my brain it's 11:40 a.m. because I've moved myself to New York time because WWDC starts next week. I want to be there for all the labs, I want to be there for all the sessions, I want to be there to have chats and conversations as much as I can. And normally I'd be there in person, but right now I'm obviously in the UK, so I'm in the wrong time zone by a long, long way. So I'm slowly nudging myself backwards to California time. So this morning, the crack of dawn in my brain, I was barely awake. I thought now would be a great time to sit and read large amounts of Swift code. So I went and had a look through as many of the WWDC student challenge submissions as I could. I tried out the code, I went on YouTube, watched a video there, and really explored it. And it always fascinates me, it always deeply interests me to see what the next generation of developers are excited about. What do they find cool? Is it SwiftUI? Is it ARKit? Is it RealityKit? And then just see that in action. See what they're building and what they're trying and where they're going. And that was my morning this morning. I went through as many as I could, trying them out and just seeing where I could get to.
And looking through them, do you see any trends, any patterns, any common themes from what are people really excited about? What are the students submitting?
So there's lots of SwiftUI. I think it'll surprise nobody. I was surprised to see a fair chunk of SpriteKit, like many, many, many SpriteKit projects. And I still have this gut instinct that SpriteKit's days are numbered. Even though I love SpriteKit, I think it's brilliant, it's not seeing anywhere near enough deployment. And with SceneKit also kind of hovering around the rim of the drain waiting to go under, RealityKit's going to take over any day now, I feel. But will it be 3D and 2D? I don't know. Massive tangent. Short version is SwiftUI was huge. But going through, you can see ideas and perspectives and thoughts and ideas, whatever. And they're really cool, but the best ones for me, the ones that really stood out, were the ones where someone clearly had a passion for something that matters to them. They thought, this thing here personally matters to me, and I'm going to use my Swift skills, my development skills, to have a go at exploring, if not solving, that problem. And one I saw, I picked it out on Twitter actually, it used the camera and ARKit and I think RealityKit as well and the microphone too as well, all sorts of things, to do a proof of concept stroke detection. Just a proof of concept. And it was things like, can someone lift their arms up above their head? Is their face, are they able to smile correctly or not? And they'd said...
that kind of stroke.
Yeah, well, yeah, not golf strokes. But they had said in the description that they had several of their family members die from strokes. And this was obviously a serious issue for them personally. It was serious for everybody, but for them personally, this mattered. And so using their Swift skills to have a go at solving that. Now, obviously, it requires medical research, law, and sign-off from world authorities, yada, 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 to do actual stroke detection in software. But as a proof of concept, to get folks excited and thinking about this problem, it was brilliant. And that kind of thing I absolutely love.
don't include this on the actual podcast, but you were talking about SpriteKit before this.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about stroke, I immediately thought you were talking about stroke and fill.
Okay. Yeah, don't worry. No one else will hear that apart from you and me and the rest of YouTube. No one else, just those people there will hear that.
No, seriously. I thought you were talking about that kind of stroke. So I'm thinking about graphics. I'm thinking about Swift UI. I'm thinking about the detection when maybe it's a touch thing. And it turns out it's this wonderful, health-oriented, positive and uplifting thing. And I feel like a complete idiot.
It's okay. Don't worry. No one noticed at all. You've totally got away with that one. But the thing is, this year, Esther Hare, who's, what is she, the Senior Director for Developer Marketing, I think, at Apple, gave an interview with CNN, someone like that, just describing what mattered, what kind of thing do they like to approve. And she was really clear. She said, we love seeing things that align with the same values that Apple has. So if you have accessibility, if you have education, mental health, the environment, any of those core topics that Apple really cares about at the very core, they love those kinds of playgrounds or ideas. And health, brilliant. So that kind of idea was fantastic. In fact, another one, I didn't mention it on Twitter, but I want to mention it now, that was teaching Mexican Sign Language through an app. And it, again, takes a topic someone cares about, this thing, and use that intersection of liberal arts and technology. They used their Swift skills to build it and make it happen. And they had Core ML involved as well, so you could help train pictures of other sign language. So it's a brilliant idea, and I just loved seeing that. It's exciting. It's raw. It's like, this is what app development's goal ought to be. Take a passion and make it happen. I just love it.
It's more than passion. It's impact.
Yeah.
Because it has the potential to reach out to people and affect them and better their lives. And I think that is what makes the strongest student submission, as opposed to something which is simply cool.
This is the big one, by the way. This is Sophie, the cat ear collector. She's brought a comic with her.
Hi, Sophie.
To look at. She's brought the Beano. There you go.
Nice.
There you go. Anyway, so that's my pick, the WWDC student submissions. What is your pick, Erica?
Well, as always, my pick completely pales in comparison to your pick. I have really bad pick anxiety, pick imposter syndrome, you could call it, because my pick is Mint.
Mint. So I'm going to do an Erica SpriteKit tangent and say, is there stroking somehow here involved or something like that?
No, and it doesn't involve tins either. It's Mint, which is the Swift Package Manager installer. It is available through Homebrew, and what it does is it lets you install any GitHub repository that has, a package information, package Swift as part of it, well formatted and so forth. And it lets you do this from the command line. So if you wanted to install, for example, my Now utility, you would say mint install Erica/now, and it would do it. It takes all the friction out of package installation, all those packages you might discover on Dave's site, the Dave's site, and it just works. And I love it, and it's just made my life a lot easier. And as an author who's deploying, as opposed to someone who's just consuming, I find that Mint just really was a huge step up for me. It has existed for way longer. I just discovered it, but it is really a lovely thing. It's open source. It's available on GitHub, and it is strictly for Swift Package Manager packages that are available on GitHub. And it's fantastic, and it just brought happiness to my life to discover it.
So this is actually, for folks listening along, this is a project by Jonas Kolb, and I had the privileged to meet Jonas last year at WWDC. We were lining up for, I think, James Dempsey and the Breakpoints live near Dub. And Jonas, I'd written about him previously because, as well as Mint, he's also made Beak, which is another of his wonderful ideas. This will take Swift files with global functions inside and let you call those functions from a command line interface. So you can say, run this function, and it'll just run that bit of your code. And he's just full of interesting ideas. Like, he also made Xcode Gen to generate Xcode projects from the command line, and of course Mint. So he's just an idea machine, quite frankly. He's got full of interesting ideas to make developer productivity better on our platforms. And yeah, Mint is one of his great successes. He's just so prolific, I think, in our community.
And it's so wonderful to see someone who can take these ideas, manifest them in reality, and then allow us to play with it and to benefit from it. It is exactly the best of the Swift community. And I want to take a moment to talk about how much of a fan I am of our Swift community, between the conferences, between the open source, and all the developer to developer help resources, whether it's Slack channels or IRC or the Swift forums themselves or other forums that people have developed. This is such a great community to be a part of, and such a great time to be a part of that community. And I just am really feeling the love. So I wanted to express that as part of this podcast, especially as our run up to Dub.
You're right. It is a great community. I'm not saying we're perfect, because we can do many things better. I've spoken at length about, for example, when I took Sophie to PyCon in Wales, to a Python conference. They had a whole children's day. They had dedicated sign language interpreters to do signing for folks who couldn't hear. They had loop induction services for people with hearing aids. They had so many improvements that we can incorporate in our community. But we are doing very, very well, and we're definitely in a very positive direction. And it's a real privilege to be part of the community, I think. Anyway, we've already talked for, what are we going now? Gosh, almost an hour. Let's get on to the real meat of this vodcast, podcast, whatever we decide to call this thing in the end of it, which is not our open ballot, because we are now less than 1 week. We are 1 week minus 2 hours from, or 3 hours, now, from start of Dub, basically. It starts now, pretty much, in a week's time. So we want to get into WWDC wish lists, things that in just a few short days we're hoping to see announced on the big stage at Apple Park with their recorded videos, whatever it is they end up doing, what we hope to see. And I have lots of ideas here. I know Erica has lots of ideas as well. And I hope attendees have ideas as well. To make it easier to follow, I'm going to break up slightly, talk about Swift UI first, then UIKit, then Xcode, and then other stuff. Swift UI first, then Xcode, UIKit, then Xcode, then others. So first things first, Swift UI. If you have Swift UI suggestions, folks, things you really want to see for your wish list in a week's time, go ahead and stick them in that chat area and we'll have a go at discussing them. In the meantime, while they're having a little think and writing stuff, I'm going to say the big one for me has got to be compositional collection views, because they were just gorgeous explosion of brilliance from last year's Dub, thanks to Steve Breen, and I hope that we're going to see collection views at that level of love and quality and control in SwiftUI.
I totally agree. I think that is such a big opportunity.
Wait a minute. She's got a joke for me, apparently. Go ahead.
What type of music do planets sing?
What type of music do planets sing?
What kind of music
do planets sing?
Wait. Is it the music of the spheres?
What is it?
Neptunes.
Oh, Neptunes. Right, that was so bad you could go. A terrible joke. Neptunes. Oh dear me. Sorry.
It was a wonderful joke.
Swift UI, a wish list for Dub. Let's go for it. What do you think?
Oh, for me?
Yeah, for you. Absolutely for you.
Or do you want to go to the general?
Well,
Okay.
I only have
For
one other
me,
co-host here.
which
It's
one
you or
is-
I asked Charlotte. Which do you think we'll get a better answer out of?
No. Well, she has better jokes.
That was Sophie.
And that wasn't Charlotte. That was
was
Sophie, by the way. I can't tell the difference between your children.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't tell the difference between the dogs, although one of them has a smudge on the nose.
They do. All right. So while you're thinking about your SwiftUI answer, there's a question, a
No,
response here
I
from.
got a Swift
Oh,
UI.
you're
Just
too
haven't
slow.
talked about
You're
it.
just too slow. We've got one here from Create the Imaginable who says SwiftUI for SceneKit and ARKit. Now I'm gonna guess they are not asking for SwiftUI itself to be inside or overlaid SwiftUI and ARKit. Maybe they're saying they want a SwiftUI like SceneKit, ARKit. Like what would ARKit look like if given the declarative approach of SwiftUI? What do you think?
Well, you see, this kind of ties in to what my pick would have been if you had given me the time, which is that we see so much of Quartz 2D, otherwise known as Core Graphics, showing up as specific SwiftUI implementations. You know, from Bezier paths to gradients to all of that. And what I'm really interested in is seeing those C libraries brought in on a grander scale so that it is obvious that this is the entry point to your view definition so that you don't end up in direct.
Right. It's certainly the case that we're going to hopefully see all the other Apple frameworks think, what would my framework look in this SwiftUI world? Prathamesh Kawakar says, map view, please. And map view is a great example, but so is, SF Safari View Controller or vast swathes of UIKit like Image Picker Controller and similar. Because previously, of course, it was only disclosed to a handful of folks at Apple who knew SwiftUI was happening, and now everyone knows it's happening. So in theory, all the other framework folks, core data, who knows, are thinking, well, how can I get my thing in here better and make that more integrated?
It's not only bringing that in, it's taking the paradigm of lightweight, struct-based, what is the phrase, for, there's a specific phrase that describes how the declarative layout is declared. It's, and I've gone totally blank on it.
Is it totally cool?
No, that's not it at all. It is where you declare things, and there's a type for this. Nobody uses the type. The example they always give is, what if you wanted to lay out HTML? And it is a Swift technology for creating the thing that I cannot think of right now.
DSLs?
And yes, DSL.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Domain-specific languages,
beyond,
folks. There we go.
So, domain-specific languages, or DSLs, seeing that technology expand. Could you imagine a DSL for example, core data?
I currently can't, no. Go on then.
Or, when you're using any of the audio stuff, it would be so easy to create those wonderful declarative ways of talking about how your audio is specified and how your packets should be, processed.
Yeah. I think it'll take a little while to sink in a little bit, because obviously at this point, UIKit's got a massive lead on what SwiftUI can do, but there are still many holes in UIKit. They have to draw a line somewhere, and there are many things missing from UIKit. Yeah. And Mark Moykins is here saying he'd like to see better customization for the list view. Things like colors, separator control, without having to use UI appearance. And that's an interesting thing, because we at this point are very, very aware of the underlying UIKit nature of SwiftUI for most of us. And in fact, Patrick's even said they'd like to get access to the underlying UIKit views. Have a little trapdoor, a little escape entrance to get access to the underlying UI table view. I suspect Apple are really, really keen not to do that. to say, actually, no, there is no UI kit in the SwiftUI world. It could be anything under the hood. It might look like a table view today, but it could be something else entirely tomorrow, which is cool.
I think whatever is being applied, it has to be something that can be a specification.
Right.
As opposed... They're so fluffy.
See this massive brown mark on her nose? I've got no idea where it came from. you manky dogs.
But it's very handy. Now you can tell the difference.
I can tell the difference between my kids and my dogs. It's a superpower, apparently.
Apparently has something to do with their heights.
Something like that, yeah. Those kids always look the same. Anyway, DSL, SwiftUI, UIKit, crack on.
Are we up to UIKit?
Okay, so SwiftUI with UIKit trapdoor, I meant. Sorry, Patrick's point.
Nah, go on.
Well, I can see why Apple don't want to include it. There is no way of saying, grab me the underlying table view here to modify it. And that does mean, in theory, lots and lots of modifiers must land to control separator insets and separator colors and all these different things we just take for granted in UIKit that are not currently available in SwiftUI. And the only way of fixing that really is to give us access to these things.
Let me take you off on a tangent, which is to say that in a way what SwiftUI is doing inadvertently, not necessarily deliberately, is taking a lot of the tweaks and choices away and creating a more standardized user experience across all applications by limiting the vocabulary and removing a lot of the fluff and fuzz that you find in so many UIKit apps. How's that?
You make that sound like it's double plus good from 1984.
I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing to have a consistent user experience across the platform. I think Apple has been on trend for focusing their platforms, their devices, and so forth to really target at a specific user base. And there is a kind of app that I find that drives me crazy. It is basically a free app with in-app purchases, commercial little inserts everywhere, and it's basically, it could be a web page. It's some sort of little game, because there are hundreds of millions of billions of these games, and they're ugly, and they don't have that core beauty that I think Apple would like to celebrate on its platform. And while I don't think Apple is ready to get rid of such a well-monetized part of its market, I think they would be very happy if there was something that brought even the most engineered designed and most engineered built interfaces to something a little bit more elevated, uniform, and joyful.
Okay, possible. We've got a suggestion here from our friend Ish Shabazz, who says SwiftUI open source would be nice as well. Yeah, everyone loves Ish. Open sourcing SwiftUI. Now, in a past life, before I came to Apple platforms, I was big time into Linux. I used to write for a Linux magazine, and I remember speaking to companies.
But we forgive you.
Yeah, thank you. Speaking to companies at the time like MySQL, now obviously Oracle, back at the time it was MySQL, and Novell also got acquired and then closed down, whatever it was. But then I was saying, hey, folks, you're doing great software, love it very much. Would you consider open sourcing this or open sourcing that? And from my naive perspective, open sourcing is clicking a button on GitHub. Well, Subversion back then, but the idea was the same. Click the button, boom, it's open source, you're done. But actually, when you look at the amount of work it takes from the Swift team to maintain the Swift open source project, it is not insubstantial. If they had kept Swift closed source, if they kept it closed source, they'd have an easy life. They could make all the changes they want to, hack around, no one cares. When it's open source, discussing with the community, finding agreement, reviewing pull requests, handling issues, yada, yada, yada. There's lots and lots of work there to handle open source project. Now project that onto app development in general, not just the core language, but the whole of app development in SwiftUI, it becomes massive. So I understand the call for open source SwiftUI. I would be surprised to see it happen because it's a significant investment from Apple, particularly right now when actually it takes a more maturity to happen in SwiftUI. There's a lot more work still to do before it is fully fleshed out. What do you think, Erica? That's just my view.
I think that I would be totally shocked if they went open source. It's not something I would expect. And I just have this feeling that there is a contingent of Apple who sort of regrets the open source for Swift.
Right.
And, if you look at the open source thing, it has been wonderful for the community. It has been a way of Apple finding talent because people who contribute to the Swift compiler, who create a reputation and so forth, it's been, I've seen person after person be able to convert their unpaid efforts for contributing to the Swift compiler into a career path, and that's been wonderful too. However, it's a lot easier to make decisions when you don't have thousands of people bike shedding at once and then criticizing, sometimes very publicly, your decisions without understanding the broader scope of what else is going on inside the Apple umbrella. So you can see how hard it is to try to maintain an open source community for a language that is so intertied with, with enterprise. And you can see a lot of the tension. You can see where there are stumbles. But at the same time, we've got two huge successes, which is Swift Package Manager and Swift Foundation, which, those are just awesome.
They are awesome.
And of course, there's also
I'm
Swift
looking,
Command Line. What?
I'm looking for, in a week from now, Swift 5.3 Beta 1 will land, right? Because Xcode 12, presumably, or whatever they call this thing, will land next week with Swift 5.3 Beta 1 stabilizing in September. And one of the big announcements they've said is Swift 5.3 will support Windows. That's a big thing that's going to happen. And I'm sitting here thinking, I can see the source code go by. Where is Swift Package Manager for Windows? Is it happening? Is it a thing? Because if that doesn't ship and Swift ships, what do we end up with? It's like a half-baked fork of Swift almost. So either Apple are frantically, or whoever is working on this, is frantically trying to get this thing shipped and stabilized ASAP, and in a week's time it'll be fantastic, or it's going to be quite flaky at first. Anyway, let's keep on the Swift UI topic. There's a point here from Yix, or Yixi, I never know how you pronounce your name, Yix. There's no benefit to open source Swift UI. Open source combine is more likely, and that is indeed possible. Let's talk about you.
I think that's very reasonable.
Yes, I agree. That'd be lovely. Let's think about another popular area for development, UIKit. Because of course, UIKit's carrying on. UIKit is not going away. UIKit last year had some epic new features, even as SwiftUI was launching. I'm expecting some new epic features this year, and some of those will not, I expect, make it into SwiftUI. So we'll have this sort of like catch up as one moves forward, the other one moves forward, and so forth. So I'm hoping this year, another year of great UIKit features. Are there any particular ones you're keen to see?
It's not so much UIKit so much as the design language, the visual language, that I think it's kind of stale. It's been around for forever. We've got dark mode now, yay. But I think we need a refreshed design language to just keep the visuals engaging. the last big design was Swift 7, and that was not Swift 7, iOS 7. And that was nobody really was that crazy about it at the time, but we haven't changed all that significantly since then. I think it was a big improvement, but I think we're at a time where it would be great if we had refreshed core visuals. I would love to see that. I would love to see the people who have been giving us these wonderful, Swift UI demos and so forth, put their foot down and say, let's make it look even better.
Yeah. There was obviously a refinement in iOS 11. They introduced sort of the chunky navigation bars and similar, but it was only just sort of not undoing parts of iOS 7, but clarifying it. Let's put it that way. They've added like the grouped table views last year and similar, so it's fairly small incremental changes. I think that might work better because iOS 7 was quite a jump. I mean, it was quite a shock to the system. I remember being there in the crowd thinking, "Wow, what just happened there?" And Apple explained it.
Mm-hmm.
They were pretty clear, saying, listen, for the first 6 years, we'd invented this whole new thing, a touchable glass UI, which hadn't been done before to this extent. So folks had to have these visual affordances, like physical-looking buttons and sliders. And now everyone knows you can pinch and zoom on stuff. Everyone knows what sliders are. Everyone knows what buttons are. We can scale back the visual affordances to make it easier. So they explained it. And I'm kind of happy where things are now. When I think about the amount of flux introduced in last year with, collection views or different data sources or combine or Swift UI or yada, 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 lots of big things. If they then said, hey, folks, now we're changing design language as well as potentially going towards ARM, it's like, okay, my brain can only handle so many things at the same time. And, my heart goes out to those developers who are... They've got actual day jobs trying to, keep up with iOS 13 and with new iPhones and iPads and fix their own bugs and add their own revenue critical features for the actual money, the actual company they work for. And keeping up with this, a treadmill is extremely hard. So I'd love to see a slowing down a little bit, give us time to catch up and rethink and regroup. But having said that, I do want to see, please, Apple, those little pull-up view controllers that have been around since Maps introduced them, the little half-screen ones with little pulley tabs, you can pull them up to full screen and down again. That now surely has to be in UIKit or SwiftUI, both preferably, because it's everywhere, and everyone's just hacking their own solutions together, and none are quite as good as Apple's. So Apple, please, if nothing else, give us that.
It's been 7 years. Every 7 years, I think you have to clean house.
Oh no! iOS 14 is like an iOS 7 Part 2, basically. A number 2 of iOS 7. Oh, good.
I'm the person who killed the for loop, I believe radical change.
Yes. So I remember I was at the WWDC before iOS 7, and they were... that year was collection views as well, but they said things like, oh yes, navigation bars now have a little shadow beneath them. And it's like, okay, that's your big change for design this year, fine. And of course, iOS 7 was like, bang, it's all going to change. And yeah, maybe you're right, it's time to throw it all away and start again. As long as it isn't new morphism, I'll be happy. The super flat sort of grayscale color thing.
I'm telling you, first of all, we have had SwiftUI show up. So we now have the basis for creating lightweight, easily styled, beautiful, engaging interfaces that will be a pleasure to use. How's that for marketing speech?
That sounds great. Let's think about Xcode, because obviously Xcode, presumably 12, is launching in a week's time. Last year there were some major improvements there as well. We saw, of course, the canvas, the preview area, so you could see live changes to your UI as you typed, which is remarkable. I can't imagine how much swizzling it took place to make that happen. Well done. We saw the mini map from Louis DeHoe and other changes too. So Xcode's advancing all the time.
I hate the mini map.
Oh no, Louis could be listening to this podcast, and he loves that, and I love that. It's very nice. I turn it off I have Swift UI on my screen most of the time, and I haven't got space in my massive monitor for this. But it's very good.
It is the best feature that everybody turns off.
Fair. It is. You can hold like.
But the thing is, when we look back, we're going to look back at Xcode 11, saying that was the watershed. That was such an amazing release. And I don't want to see Xcode 12 because I love Xcode 11. Xcode 11 has been superb, and I don't want them to mess it up.
Yes, well, potentially. It's been asked about for a number of years now. As Create the Imaginable says, Xcode for iPad. That is the equivalent of your iOS 7 Part 2 bomb for Xcode. Let's take all our stability, all our exactly carefully crafted UI, and just put that on the iPad. Bang!
Yeah, the only way I want it on the iPad is if it's running Mac OS or some sort of Mac OS type thing. Because there's no reason, given the capabilities, that a plugged-in iPad can't be driving a few monitors, can't be, having sufficient power to, do your daily work. I can see it's the iPad Duo. That's what they're going to call it. And, I can see that happen. But the thing is that Xcode is not and will never be a touch-based interface. I would love to have a touch screen. Touch screens are awesome. I can't wait for my 24-inch iPad, but I don't see serious office work. Even though Apple has been pushing this and pushing and pushing, they put Photoshop on the iPad, they've put Word on the iPad, they've done all those things, but having a proper desktop is still something that developers, I think, need, and I don't think Apple's ready to ditch its developer community, which is why I don't see macOS dying the big one. But macOS on iPad, I'm totally in there. Sign me up. I want it. I want to buy it, and I want not just the iPad Duo, but I want the iPad Duo Pro with the super good chips, the extra memory, and so forth. Of course, then it will be so expensive I can't take it out of the house because I'm afraid of dropping my iPad like within 2 weeks of purchasing it, and then the screen's gone, and you know how that goes.
Yeah, it'd be expensive. There's some great suggestions here in the chat, actually. Us Island says, Appcode style Alt-Enter.
The chat I cannot see.
To declare a function that doesn't already exist. This is a power feature, and it's actually from Appcode, and it's really, really good, because you write code, just like TDD, that won't work. That's exactly how TDD works. And it'll say, you're trying to use a function or an enum that doesn't exist. Do you want to Alt-Enter, create it? Bang, it makes the enum for you, makes the function for you, filling in the parameter names and parameter types based on what you've actually used. And it really is the most TDD optimized way of working I've ever seen. And it's one of those things where you meet folks who use Appcode who won't ever go back to Xcode because they've seen what Appcode does for them in terms of a testing first mentality. And it is absolutely remarkable, and I do wish they would steal ideas from Appcode more freely. In fact, there's a whole list of folks asking for Appcode features inside the thing.
Never been known to steal really good ideas.
Yes, yeah, it's certainly true that they could do and should do and aren't doing, and we'll see, because it'd be nice.
What they should do is basically buy Appcode rather than just steal the ideas, give the people lots of nice money, and the developers bring them into as part of the DevTools team.
1 second, sorry.
Sophie made me these pirate leggings.
Sophie made you some pirate leggings?
Yeah.
Okay, good girl. Cool. They're busy crafting downstairs, I think.
But it's a great idea. I totally agree. This would be something I would love to see, love to use. And yes, I wish Apple would prioritize things like that.
Yeah.
We deserve nice things.
We do, says Suresh Kanlu, and he's right. I think particularly with Appcode, because they're JetBrains and they make Kotlin, they make a number of other serious things for other platforms, Apple could not buy them. As we saw with Buddy Build, or more recently Dark Sky, Apple will usually shut down things they buy for re-engineering, whatever. And presumably, everyone's been saying it for years, this is the year Buddy Build's going to relaunch. It's an amazing thing. Maybe. But if they bought JetBrains and, shut down Xcode and the other things they make for, the web stuff they make with PHP and JavaScript or whatever, it'd be a serious impact for the community, and they probably wouldn't recover from it very quickly. So that's probably...
They don't have to buy the entire company. It's possible just to buy the Xcode team.
Or just steal the features. I mean, honestly, you can't copyright features. They're not...
Which is what they normally do.
Yeah, so just totally do it. Yeah, it'd be a good idea. So Xcode, I think, is ripe for improvement. And I would like to see it on the iPad. I do use Xcode Playgrounds on my iPad, and it works very nicely. I just wish I had more control. If they made, I think, 2 changes to Swift Playgrounds for iPad, both of which I think they won't make, but you never know, I would be all over it. And one is to have Xcode style inline code completion. They have this bar at the bottom saying, here are the things you want, which one you want to press on. I want a drop-down list, just like Xcode has, where I can just sort of press the one I want and swipe through whatever Xcode style thing. And also, let me change my white space. Because obviously this thing's designed for folks who are learning Swift. They control the white space very carefully. You can't just say, add some tabs here, whatever. So you have it's tabbing or nothing. And so, give me an advanced mode option there, bang, I would get a Xcode Lite on iPad immediately, and it would work. By the way, Clickbait King has said navigation view working in Playgrounds. That already works. It already works. It's just that it thinks you're an iPad, so it does the whole split screen thing for you. And that's where SwiftUI is falling down a little bit. It doesn't necessarily integrate very well into Playgrounds. So maybe that's another thing. The Playgrounds team, yes, they're part of Apple, of course they are, and so is the Apple Education team, and so is the other folks working on Playgrounds. But it takes them time to see, SwiftUI, and catch up to that. There's no SwiftUI curriculum from them yet. I mean, almost a year after SwiftUI is launched. It takes some time to catch up. And I hope they do something really, really big. We're going to see.
Consider who the audience is for Swift Playgrounds. It is K through 12, primarily, college a little bit, but it is edutech. And because of that, they're trying to teach the concepts of computer programming. It is never going to be a replacement for Xcode. It is never going to be something where they want to get the latest things. They know their audience. They know who they're trying to reach out to. And they've done a fantastic job of creating the tool with this vision. I don't think Swift Playgrounds is or should be the route towards Xcode on iPad.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If they choose to ship Xcode for iPad, it will be a separate product where they can add options galore. Because Xcode's packed with options, to do exact customizations of stuff. And they don't want that, polluting a very simple, clean, nice Playgrounds. And that's why we have on macOS, we have Playgrounds and Xcode side by side. So I'd like to see a slightly more powerful Playgrounds on iPad, but also definitely a bigger Xcode. I mean, imagine, like right now, if you're learning and you buy a $300 iPad, or even a used one, you can get cheaper than that. It's not expensive to get into the iPad space. Wouldn't it be nice if you could build an app on your iPad and ship it to the App Store? To build, test, deliver, deploy right on your iPad. I know it's not easy, but with Interface Builder out of the question, if it's just SwiftUI, if it's just Swift, then it becomes simpler and potentially deployable. And if they can solve the horrors like code signing and similar, it'd be amazing. And what a game changer that would be for removing barriers. You haven't got to buy a MacBook Pro anymore. You haven't got to buy a Mac Mini anymore. Just buy a used iPad Air, whatever it is that runs iOS 14, and you're on the App Store. That'd be incredible. Let's look on just briefly about other possible things that might be changed in upcoming days, because the whole raft of other things, of course, might change. Someone's already mentioned Core ML or Creator ML. Presumably they can change as well. I'm expecting RealityKit to shoot forward because it's basically a game engine right now, but isn't quite officially a game engine, but it needs to be. So that'd be nice. That's why I think... Oh, I'm hearing some static from you, Erica.
No, that was my son upstairs. He flushed.
Okay, fine. That's all right then. So the whole other world of things...
I'm so glad I was able to share this with the entire YouTube channel, though. But thank you for that, Paul.
Yeah. We had a whole other world of things that might change next week. And absolutely top of my list. I've already seen some things actually go back on this in the chat window. Has to be documentation. Has to be a significant change for documentation, because right now they can improve it. They can do more documentation if they want to, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be. So it's got to be a complete break, a complete relaunch of Apple documentation is what I really want to see. If nothing else, just take what you've got, park that, call it all archived. I want to see a full rewrite. I want to see sample code, hands-on examples, tutorials, challenges, badges, gamification, and more. Take us forward 20 years in documentation.
Let me tell you some realities of that documentation. Nearly everything you have from Swift is auto-generated now from the headers. And right now, we don't have sample code in the headers, and we need to have sample code support in the headers.
Okay.
I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's been discussed at a big part of the community once, and it will make a big difference about trying and testing and so forth. There's so much that the headers can, include, but then you look at the code, and there are 3 lines of Swift code, and there are roughly 30 pages of header doc for that single little method, and it becomes ridiculous. So either we keep pushing forward with automatically generated, documentation from there, or we have to rethink exactly how this is approached. I do not see any change to this within the next 2 to 3 years.
Oh no, that'd be so sad. That's what I'm saying. I want... It's got to go away. Like, so someone's saying here, it's create the imaginable again, actually. The new, like the Swift UI documentation, and I think, I presume that you're referring to the Swift UI tutorials that walk you through building a Swift UI app, and it's so
the
Apple.
Swift
It's so beautiful. It's so Apple. You scroll down, it shows you what you actually got. Then you see some code, then a screenshot, code, screenshot. But it's only one part of the bigger problem. It does not work for me even fractionally. I go to documentation, press Command F, look for my thing, and want to find it. And that does not solve that problem. And elsewhere, SwiftUI's documentation is based around the classic Apple documentation, where your root in any structure is a method signature. That's it. And that doesn't work very well in the modifier world, where everything has everything pretty much. Every view has a full set of stuff. So it's very, very confusing to find stuff. So I want to see a complete root and branch rewrite of the documentation. And someone actually says in the chat window here, Clickbait King, great name. I'd love it if they just pulled Swift UI docs from your website onto theirs. I would too. I would love that too. I mean, that's how I solve problems. I think, how do I solve this problem? I try code out. That didn't work. That didn't work. That didn't work. Oh, this works. That must be a good solution. I do that, and I'm iteratively thinking things through. Apple, talk to me. Let's make it happen. We can do better than this. So I'm hoping for a complete revamp of documentation. Even though it might put me out of a job, I want a complete rewrite of documentation. Burn it all. Defund the documentation. Let's do it from scratch. Let's see it all happen, and a complete rethink, because it needs to happen. That became a massive rant. Sorry.
Swift UI has 2 main problems with this documentation. The first one you already touched on, which is every single bit of it shows every other component it can possibly interact with, but that's an end-to-end thing. It's not a 1, 2, 3 thing. There's no way to focus. There's no way to search, to find by discovery. That has totally been lost because of that way that the documentation is created. And the other problem is that the sample code keeps going out of date, and it keeps breaking over and over and over and over. And it is beautiful. It is just lovingly put together. But the second you get to the point where you can't use it anymore because it has broken since, however many betas ago, it fails to live up to its purpose, and it is letting itself and its users down.
Absolutely. But what I worry about is that Apple wouldn't let any of this affect their hardware or their user-facing software. They know that when they ship an iPhone, I was reading about how they do iPhones, and it was things like, our components, we have a tolerance of 2 or 3 microns, whatever it is, a tiny, tiny little space of tolerance they have for their devices. And what they do is when a component comes in at the 2 micron level, bigger than average, they find the other 2 micron level things and put them together into a 2 micron larger iPhone, wherever it happens to be. So they make sure that everything fits together perfectly. And that's the level of love they put into their hardware. And when it comes to developers, I was looking at their date formatting guide recently. And that is in their developer.apple.com archive. I was looking at their view controller accessibility stuff. That's in archive. I was looking at their core filter stuff. That's archived. They don't even keep up to date their accessibility stuff anymore. Never mind everything else they're working on. And they would never, never, never stand for that. In their public software, in macOS, iOS, MacBook Pro, whatever it is, they'd never ever stand for it. So why they think it's okay to do that for developers just winds me up.
I will put forth then that the entire developer community, despite its massive success, is nothing more than Apple's dog food. And by dog food, I mean that we're using the tools and technologies that were meant to be developed for internal use that have been exposed to us for courtesy's sake, to create the developer community, to fund the App Store, and so forth. And that is why you do not see that same level of micron level control, because this is facing a community that is incredibly, incredibly tiny.
Yeah.
The developer community is not where Apple's money is.
Fair. I've just now found a tweet from you, and this is from November 2016. And you're tweeting about the GCD async after deadline, which is a very important piece of API. We use that a heck of a lot. And of course, it was no overview available. And I quote tweeted you, November the 8th, 2016, saying, if Apple were to GitHub their docs, I'd have pull requests by the dozen. And that is still true today. I would love to help out here. And actually, Cesar Palmer says, what about open sourcing the documentation? And and again, it's a problem of open sourcing. It isn't easy compared to what it sounds like. It's hard, but it would be a step forward. I mean, they have to acknowledge it's a serious problem. There's even a website from Matt Thompson, nooverviewavailable.com, and that should be a stain on their DevPub division saying we have to do better than this. We've got to solve this problem. And people like me, people like you, we're desperate to help. The community really, really wants to help, but so far we're not even seeing an acknowledgement there is a problem. Never mind asking for help. There's not even a problem at this point officially, as far as I can tell. And that's got to change. Surely.
I think that we are liked, we are cared about, but that they don't have the time. I think everybody I know who works for Apple puts in 27-hour days, ridiculous commitment. It is a very, very hard thing to work in that environment. And I don't think there's ever any malice or
no.
anything like that. But I think it's simply a reflection of the reality of what they can reasonably deliver to us.
I get that.
And they try their best.
I have nothing but love for the developer publications team, DevPubs. They do amazing work. They're trying their best. And just last week I was watching that Steve Jobs quote. I was talking to Walter Mossberg about his return to Apple. And he said, he said to the folks, there are some great engineers here. Why are you still here? Why have you gone through this whole Apple drought? Why are you still here? And their response to him was, because we bleed in 6 colors, the 6 colors of the Apple logo. And that's where you saw this commitment to make things the very, very best they could. And that still stands across the board today. Folks at Apple are doing amazing work, putting in the effort, putting the time, and the remarkable skills to build great stuff. I love them for that. But there's not enough of them. And that's true in so many places. And it's got to somehow change. Because, I mean, only recently we saw the compositional collection views being documented, 10 months after they were announced. And that was a tentpole iOS 13 feature. So either we continue with this slide towards documentation oblivion, which is where we are, or something serious changes. And I hope, even though they're trying their best, I hope that's all going to change real soon now. Anyway, that's enough for our wish list section. We've been going an hour and a half now, Erica. I think it's time to wrap up. What do you think?
I think that wrap up is reasonable, but before we do our pause, what do we want to do for the wrap up? Is there an open ballot or?
Well, the thing is, next week is Dub. So I suspect the next time we record, which will be in about 2 weeks' time, all being well, it'll be post-Dub. I'm hoping to be absolutely gobsmacked by the amazing undocumented features Apple have just announced. And we'll be excited to see what folks are keen to get into. I suspect our open ballot next time, insofar as we have one, will be, what did you love most? What are you most excited about? What are you trying now? How do you think this will affect Swift and Swift UI in the future? How do you feel about the new PowerPC chips Apple have announced?
You see, that is it. So you do the wrap up, because that is exactly what we need to be saying and asking.
Yeah, so what I'll do on the podcast is I'll just play that bit back I said and make it look like it was all planned. How about that? Perfect.
I couldn't improve on what you just said.
Well, apart from hopefully the PowerPC chips, but well, you never know, do you? It's always an interesting world of Dub. Anyway, folks, thank you so much for coming along to the live stream. It's been wonderful having you here. If you enjoyed this vodcast thing, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, all those nice things. And of course, this will be put into an actual podcast to go on the main Apple Podcasts app in the next few days or hours or so. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks to Erica for coming along and having a fun time here with some live Erica giggles. Until next time, folks, it's been sort of a coffee with your empty coffee cups and water bottles. We'll see you next time, folks. Take care. Bye.